We love weird stuff, don't we? I know. We're weird people. Things like UFOs and Area 51, and we watch like shows like Stranger Things on Netflix. Bigfoot and Yeti and conspiracies. We like weird. So it's today in our story, we're going to look at some weird things that happened. And that's okay. There can be weird stuff in the Bible that we can get through. So that's what we're going to do today. We're looking at the story in Acts chapter 2. And there's so many weird things, but amazing things that were taking place. The first thing we see right off the bat that we get to know what's kind of going on. What is the celebration? What is bringing all of these people to Jerusalem? Well, they're celebrating. It's Pentecost. What's Pentecost, you say? Well, Pentecost can be translated as 50th. And this is now 50 days after the Passover. The Passover was when they celebrated when the angel passed over the Israelites while they were in Egypt. And right now they are celebrating the Feast of Weeks. This is when the law was given. The Torah was given to the Israelites. And it was 50 days after they had crossed the Red Sea. So this number 50 is very significant to this because now they would remember this as Pentecost, when the Holy Spirit came 50 days later after the Passover. It would become very significant to the church today. Well, some things happened here. First, we see what happens is that it says that as this 120 people are gathered together, they're worshiping, they're praying, they're encouraging one another. It says that suddenly the whole room was just filled with the presence of the Holy Spirit. And it said that it shook the whole room. Witnesses and testimonies that they've written about said that it felt like it was a tornado that hit this place. It came out of nowhere, but it came, friends, we have to recognize that this came from heaven. This was a heaven-sent experience that was going on with these people. This room was filled to capacity. Every square inch of this room was filled. And it said that it was like a violent windstorm. It just came out of nowhere, but they heard the sound. And they felt the presence of the Holy Spirit so powerfully in that room. And maybe you've had those experiences before. Maybe you've been in a church service or you've been somewhere before in a gathering where the Holy Spirit came so powerfully that it just filled the whole room. What an amazing time this would have been for them. This would have been awesome. They would have loved this. And so it says that the whole room was filled. And then it tells us that there was tongues of fire that appeared over their head. Fire. I love a good bonfire. And I'm not really into the whole s'mores and roasting marshmallows and singing Kumbaya. That's just not my thing. I just love just watching the fire. And I've learned some things about fire. As I remember, I would just used to put on big logs and hopefully that it would start. But I've learned that you can't do it that way. You have to start with kindling and you have to then put the logs on and then eventually it all gets consumed. And it's just a marvel to watch. I just love it. Well, this is what the Israelites understood fire as, purification, where it would come and consume their whole being. And it would find those areas that were against God, that didn't belong, that needed to be removed. And so this fire, when they saw this, they would have recognized that this was very important. This was integral to what was going to happen next. This was time to clean house, to get rid of the junk, get rid of stuff in their life, the sin in their life that was keeping them from the mission that God had called them to do. But then it was tongues of fire. Well, the tongues represented the multiple languages that were there. And it says that in Acts chapter 2, that when the people came running, they began to hear their own languages being spoken. There was many different countries that had came together. Remember, they came for Passover. So there was people from every ethnicity, every nationality, every language. And they were hearing whatever this group of apostles, this 120 people, were saying. They could hear it in their own language. And there was something about this that was significant, that the Holy Spirit wanted to come and make this message available for all people. This was now a change. This was something that was no longer just going to be for the Jewish people, but now it was going to be available to all people. This was very significant. So this tongues of fire represented all the multiple languages. And then it says next, and this is where sometimes there's a little controversy. And that's okay. We can go there. We can have controversy. That they were filled with the Holy Spirit and began to speak in other tongues or other languages. Here again, we see this word filled, and this is to be filled to overflowing. This group of people were completely filled with the Holy Spirit, but they were filled with the Holy Spirit, this dunamis power. They were beginning to be equipped and empowered for the mission that they were about to take on. They were about to go and share the good news, tell everybody about Jesus. All throughout the Roman Empire was going to be revolutionized and turned upside down. And this group of people was about to do this. But friends, there was something here that they were still a little afraid. There was still some fear. But this Holy Spirit came in and empowered them and charged them up. And they went and turned the world upside down. Christianity began to spread throughout the Roman Empire, and it is what it is today because of those 120 people going and sharing. Now, the speaking in other tongues. There's a couple of things that this does. First thing is that we see that it was to represent all of the language, human language. Everybody could hear it in their own language, but it also is heavenly speech. This is used often in worship and in prayer and in praying for others as a way to communicate with God. Maybe words that just aren't coming, but the Holy Spirit comes and intercedes on our behalf, and we speak this language towards God, this heavenly speech that helps us in our worship, in our prayer, in praying for others. I want to tell you that I remember when I was 18 and when I was filled with the Holy Spirit, and it was so amazing. And I remember that it changed me. I was kind of a shy kid. I was afraid to get up in front of people, but that changed, and I began to tell my friends and people that I came in contact with about Jesus. This is the moment when God called me to be a pastor. Something I thought I could never do. But the Holy Spirit said, no, I'm equipping you. This is what I have for you. And the same was for this group of 120 people. This was a game changer. This empowered them to be able to go and do the mission that God had called them to do. So friends, I know that Acts 2, there's some weird stuff that happens, but I want to tell you, it's wonderful. What we see happening is so beautiful. That the room filled with the presence of the Holy Spirit. Friends, we should be longing for this in our churches, to be having our churches filled with the presence of the Holy Spirit. That these tongues of fire that came to consume them, to get rid of the junk, get rid of the sin in their life, and to be able to be languages for all people. And that they were individually filled with the Holy Spirit to overflowing. It empowered them. It gave them that dunamis power to do the mission. And then there was the speaking in tongues, this heavenly language this heavenly speech between us and God. That it's almost like it just is a continuation and a development of our relationship between us and God. So friends, it may seem weird. It may seem, why did that have to happen? But friends, I want to tell you, long to be filled with the Holy Spirit, because it will empower you to do the mission that God has called you to do.